Welcome to Frost Sessions, the Frost School of Music's official podcast. On this week's episode, vocalist, musical director, and talented educator Dr. Raina Murnak interviews the incredible Dr. Nancy Kirsner, certified in marriage and family therapy, occupational therapy, trainer, educator, and practitioner, and child-parent psychotherapy. Listen into a spirited conversation as these two best friends explore the benefit of evidence-based positive psychology for performers, the importance of character strength, and how we all have more in common than meets the eye. Thank you for joining us today, and remember to stay tuned to Frost Sessions.
Hello, everybody. I am so excited to be doing one of these podcasts for the Frost School of Music, and I am joined by one of my best friends in the world and research partners, Dr. Nancy Kirsner.
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
My name is Dr. Raina Murnak, and I'm the head of Contemporary Voice and Performance Artistry at the Frost School of Music. And I have been on this journey with Nancy for years now, I guess.
5 years.
Oh, at least.
At least 5 years.
At least 5 years. And we have been doing a lot of research in the intersection of positive psychology and music training, and being a musician, actually, and everything that has to do with performance and training, etc. And we wanted to share with you some of our best findings, but pertinent to what's going on right now in the world.
Kind of our best practices, because we're both very active as professors and teachers, and you're a performer, and in a way, I guess you could say I perform. I'm a clinician, but I facilitate groups, and I'm a trainer. So it's really kind of our best practices.
Yeah, and we wanted to make this very pertinent for what's happening now in the world. So for musicians specifically, we wanted to give you some tools that come from character strengths. So we're going to be talking a lot about character strengths today, and we're going to be directing you to a website so you can take a test and find out what your character strengths are. But first, before we even get into that, okay, I want you, Nancy, to introduce yourself, tell the good people who you are, and I definitely want to get into our meet cute story, because we had a very...
Our meet cute story?
We had a meet cute.
Yeah. So, you want me to tell the meet cute?
Yeah! So first of all, introduce yourself, because they need to know all the majesty that is Dr. Nancy Kirsner.
I'm a clinician, and I'm a UM graduate, Assistant Dean of Women from UM, way back when. And I've been out in the community, mostly in the private sector, and in consulting and training for 40 plus years. So at about 5 years ago, 2015, at the age of 60 plus, I decided that I needed to learn about positive psychology. Why did I need to learn about positive psychology? The reason I needed to learn about it, it was the cutting edge in terms of the neuroscience about the brain, and specifically one major finding that is probably one of the best and largest medical findings that's impacted education, performing, and teaching is we've learned that the brain is neuroplastic, so it changes throughout the lifespan.
Right.
And I also wanted to learn, because this neuroscience and positive psychology is all evidence-based, so it's supported by research. It's not just self-help books.
Right.
It's been researched. It has a lot of science behind it. And that's a lot of impact, particularly with people that perform and teach, because it's about really learning to use our brain and our body as a tremendous instrument, and it is. And my part was I was particularly interested in how we can use and train our brain to be our best self.
Right. You know, and the neuroplasticity and all of the brain research was fascinating to me when I first met Nancy years ago. And when we actually, we first met each other in the context of teacher-student, believe it or not.
Yes. Excellent.
Nancy came to me in her positive psychology certification.
So I had to do a final project and to get certified as a positive psychologist. And what I decided to do was I wanted to go back to something that had given me tremendous joy as a young person, and that was singing and dancing.
Awesome.
So I decided that I wanted to take singing lessons again, and that's how we came together. And so Raina was with me as I was getting certified, and I said to her when I was learning about character strengths, I said, "Hey Raina, I have an idea. How about we find, or I find, a song I really like that represents each of the character strengths,
Right.
and we record it, and I learn to sing it.
And that's how we started, actually finding songs to represent these strengths, which we'll talk to you about. There are 24 of them. So, and all of you have them. It's just they're in a different order.
That's right.
So we started there, and in the process of me teaching Nancy, intuitively, I feel like we had a lot in common in the way that we teach.
Right.
Nancy is a teacher, I'm a teacher. Nancy's a lot of other things too.
Right. Yeah.
But, you know, we were really working from each other's strengths. And she started mentioning things to me that put vocabulary to practices that I was doing already. And
Exactly.
right, and then to enhance that with all of the information about how there is evidence of this in the brain, scientific evidence, research and studies that show that learning in these ways is much more effective. And anecdotally, as a teacher not trained in neuropsychology and all of it, I saw that in my students. I could recognize the difference when something worked and when something did not work. And to hear that this was an entire field.
A science.
A science. And it was so reaffirming, and it inspired me to just really learn and read and research myself and basically.
And by the way, when you hear a lot about the science of happiness and the science of well-being, and a lot of people think it's kind of like fluff. But what's very different, and what compelled me to go learn this, is all of the things that I learned as I was getting trained, and they weren't researched in this way. They really did not have a science behind them. And what does that mean? It means that there are practices and there are ways to train that we know work. We know they work. And just so I don't want you all to think that character strengths are esoteric, so why don't we just throw out and name some of them?
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
Character strengths are things you really know about. You probably don't call them that. They are things like love of learning, curiosity, fairness, social intelligence,
Zest,
bravery,
honesty,
perseverance,
creativity,
teamwork,
humor.
leadership,
Yeah. So
forgiveness.
Right.
These are other wonderful thing in positive psychology. There kind of is no lingo or terminology. So these are things that you know about. They're not esoteric.
Right. So, maybe now that we've kind of given a background on how we met, teacher-student relationship, how we sort of became interested in each other's fields, because at the same time that I was being, really inspired by your field, Nancy, I think she was being really inspired by getting back into music and how this, I think you saw how this helped me personally, and it kind of sparked a new light for you as to how could this help musicians in general.
Exactly, and I think also, you personally as a teacher embodied, and it was interesting, both you and the person that I chose to take a ballroom dancing with were both very unique as teachers. You embodied the positivity I was learning about.
Right.
So a lot of times what I did is I gave you a language for what you were doing, because you just naturally so much teach from the positive, and were really speaking to my strengths.
Right.
Because one of the common things with probably performers as well as regular people who go to learn to sing is we're very embarrassed or shy about our voice. It's not trained. We hear it the first few times and we go ah.
Right.
So hearing all of your positive accolades, and at first I thought, oh, she's just blowing smoke, and then I really came to see you really believed it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, as a voice teacher and in the contemporary voice, you have to understand that the following two voices are considered award-winning, amazing contemporary voices. Whitney Houston, Bob Dylan. So we have that, right? There is no one standard by which someone's expression is valid.
So here was a good parallel. So that uniqueness that you taught me about, and to appreciate and accept my voice, is also the uniqueness of character strengths.
Right.
Because no one person has the same footprint
Yeah.
of how these character strengths are arranged.
Right.
So there was a lot of tie-ins like that.
Yeah, and and also that no two people have the same voice. Like the voice is as unique as a snowflake. So you have a fingerprint of your voice in the same way you have a fingerprint of your finger, and my job as a teacher, as a voice teacher, is number one, deal with the person, human instrument. That's the instrument. The instrument is the person. The sound is a secondary event. And the sound comes from the person's breath mechanism, the person's facial features, the person's emotional past and present. So knowing all the richness that goes into the sound of a voice, which changes all of the time, day to day, that excites me about all of my students. And maybe that I recognize that there's such beauty in such, minute differences and, day-to-day differences. I'm enthralled in the beauty of it, which might explain.
Well, yes, but what you're talking about too is what I got excited about as I would listen to you say things like that is the power of character. I started being very curious about how if performers knew their character strengths,
right,
particularly their top character strengths, because
right,
we're going to be talking about that, is that all of the research, which is very practical, showed that if people live, work, love in their character strengths,
right,
you're more vital, you're more energized, you're more empowered,
yeah,
there's more whole being. So I got really curious. I thought, wow, how would teaching performers their character strengths,
right,
how might that help them come more from core, which was really kind of the same thing you were saying, but in a different language.
right. And Nancy teaching me about what character strengths are, and then me figuring out my own, it was the biggest aha moment I think I've ever had in my life. Because I looked back on every choice I made as a performer, as a professional, as an educator, in relationships, every choice that I made, and anything that violated my top strengths always felt wrong. I was not successful at it.
Mm-hmm. So let me give them just give you a tiny definition of what are character strengths.
Yes.
So character strengths are, they used to call them virtues. They're the parts of us that are very core. They're how we show up in the world. They're our lens of seeing the world. And typically, over a lifetime, they can shift a little, but they tend to be pretty stable. They're not like a skill. Like, for instance, at this stage of my life, I don't swim like I swam. I don't dance like I danced at 20. So they're not skills. They kind of don't go away. They're kind of very essence core qualities.
Yeah. And maybe some of the history of how these character strengths were compiled, because I find that fascinating. They had to be common to all time periods and all populations.
Cross-cultural.
Cross-cultural.
Intergenerational.
And
they studied the classics,
right,
Aristotle, and the psychology,
fascinating,
and anthropology, and it took them almost 3 years,
right,
to decide on these particular 24 character studies.
Think about that. Everything that we're talking about is common to every world religion as something that is a virtue, and that's why they're originally called virtues, but character strengths. So they are lauded elements of a person's makeup, I guess.
And thus, when you go, the website is VIA, which actually stands for values in action, which is what these character strengths are. They show up in who we are and how we act.
Yeah. So via character, is it via.org?
Yeah,
via characterstrengths.org. Sorry about that. We'll definitely make sure that
it's a free survey. It takes about 20 minutes. It's a lot of fun. And you can even turn us off right now and go do it.
Yeah, you can pause it and come back, so this becomes really, really pertinent to you. But as I was saying before, my number one character strength is appreciation of beauty and excellence. And hearing that, and anybody who knows me understands that this match is not just a coincidence. And for you podcast, just audio listeners, there's a neon orange situation with an olive green jewel in the center. So can I tell them
what that meaning is?
Yeah.
So you'll see that all these things have very, what I call street language, which I like. So here's appreciation of beauty and excellence. Noticing and appreciating beauty and excellence or skilled performance in various domains of life, from nature to art to mathematics to science to everyday experience. So what Raina's commenting about, and if you know her, even if she's extremely casual and you go in to see her, there will be some match, particularly of color,
There, yes.
in the jewelry.
There will be a
the
whole
earrings.
theory behind everything you see.
And she could be in jeans, but there's going to be an attention to the beauty and the way it's arranged.
Right.
And in any of her settings, you go into her office or her home, you know, there's attention and things get moved around because she's very visual. And
I'm very visual, but you know, and also in a deep dive, actually, in the Martin Seligman and Christopher Peterson, you know, manual where they describe the process. I was actually reading about Walt Whitman. That was his number one as well, and people who described him said that they never knew somebody who got so much enjoyment from nature, and that's a huge thing for me. Just is in awe. So awe and wonder are those two things that happen to me. And so when I listen to a student making music, I lose myself, you know, and the student themselves might be self-correcting, feeling self-conscious. I'm lost in the beauty of the expression. So, you know, it's interesting. That's where my direction as a teacher and an artist goes to first, because, you know, everything I do is very intentional, and I do set up the beautiful atmosphere, and I do get lost in what I'm doing myself. So when I learned that that was my number one strength, it was validating.
very validating.
Yeah.
And my number one strength, and I've taken this in the 5 years, I've probably taken it at least 8 times. And they have my strengths have shifted, but kind of the top. And because the other thing that we want to say about this is the reason we teach character strengths, and today we're just actually in the phase of making you aware of your character strengths, and we really want to encourage you to take the VIA, is because you need to see them. And when you see your strengths, you begin to both appreciate them. And this whole love of learning thing, you know, I'm kind of an intellectual geek. I love to learn.
No.
I do. I
This
love to
woman
learn.
has so many certifications and titles and letters affixed to her name. So yes.
And it has nothing, I really don't
She loves
care about
learning.
the letters. I am happiest when I'm learning.
Yes.
And you know, the thing I learned the other day is, and this is another interesting thing, when you are living, loving, and in your top strengths, all of those wonderful positive things like dopamine, serotonin, the good endorphins, they get released when you're doing things that are pleasurable.
Right.
So that does it for me.
That's right.
You know, it's really fun for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love of learning.
Love of learning.
And, you know, we actually have 2 of our top strengths in common.
We do,
Which
yep.
makes us a great couple of research partners. Zest and creativity. And I would
Yep.
say that both of us, I mean, first of all, she was talking about my space. Her office, where she sees clients, is a fantasy land of theater and puppets and props and feather boas and glitter and just everything. Because, you know, I guess we didn't mention that
I'm
you're a
psychodramatist.
psychodramatist.
Yeah, psychodramatist, yeah.
So basically using the tool of theater in therapy, and her office is a stage. It's unbelievable. So the creativity that goes into, you know, setting that up or seeing what, like bunny slippers. She has a whole collection of different kinds of slippers that symbolically could mean something to her clients who need to literally stand in the energy. I mean, just she's so creative and zesty. We're both very zesty, if you can't tell, you know.
So one of the things that we were aware of, you know, is that the this talking to you today about character strengths is very different than we might have talked to you before this pandemic. So one of the things that we really want to encourage you to find out about is, you know, your character strengths are like little golden nuggets. And when you learn what they are, you'll be much more aware of them. And they will both energize you and empower you. And also they connect you not just to yourself and your core, but when you're in that very connected, congruent, flowing place, you connect better with others. And we decided we really wanted to talk today some about how we think we're using our character strengths to kind of get through this very challenging time.
Right. So and I think it's very useful. First of all, I want to maybe clarify some of the misnomers of strength-based learning. This doesn't mean work on what's already good or not criticize people. That doesn't mean that at all. It actually means use your innate strengths to get you through that which you are learning, that which is challenging. So it's not, let me put it in a vocal perspective. Let's say that I am really not great at runs and riffs, right? Or melismas, or whatever context you want to think about that. And let's say one of my strengths is creativity. Thinking of creative ways to practice that will get me better at that, will inspire me instead of me feeling, oh, I'm just not good at this. It's how can I use the things that I'm already really strong at to help me through that which challenges me. So
how and we do this all the time, by the way, bear with us.
We do this.
So what the way we like to say that is, how can I use what I'm strong in to leverage the things I'm not so strong in? And the example I always like to give, and this is a real shift in mindset about how we've been educated from the time we're very, very young. If I have, if my grass is like totally dead in my yard, I'm not going to grow any new grass from that. I'm going to have to go somewhere and get one of those plugs of fresh green grass. We really don't grow from our the parts of us that are weak and dead. What we usually do is we actually use our strengths to leverage and help grow the parts of us that aren't as strong. Let's see, an example I had. There's 24 strengths in this via. There's many more strengths in life. I invent ones and add them all the time. But I was very upset that humor was my 24th strength. and so I was always that person in elementary school and junior high, and I'd say, could you please, I didn't get what was funny about that. So I very decided to use my creativity and my love of learning because I wanted to elevate my humor. I'm proud to say it's not 24 anymore, it's somewhere in the middle. So one of the things I did is I sent for all the I Love Lucy tapes, because that was the humor person I remember as a kid, and I just kind of immersed myself in that, and I made myself go to comedy clubs. So the good thing about these strengths is I want you to think of them as a garden. It's the garden within you. Is you can grow them. It's not set in stone.
Right.
And we talk about cultivating them.
Right.
So it's a wonderful positive philosophy.
Well, absolutely.
That you can grow them.
So your last one was humor.
Yep.
Which is in my top 5.
Uh-huh.
My last one was teamwork. Okay. So that was something that even working with Nancy, I consciously knew. God, I really need to work on this. And it's not that I don't work with people. It's that when I'm working with people, I'm still usually running a show. I'm teaching. I'm running a rehearsal. I'm in charge, which is different than teamwork. Teamwork means there's a certain amount of letting down your guard, vulnerability, letting others take responsibility, which was hard for me. So working with Nancy, my teamwork went up.
That I'll say too is, we just did something very human, and you're going to do it too. So we want to tell you is you're going to go to the bottom of your list. You're going to look at that last page and go, oh my goodness,
I suck at this.
It's 24 and 23.
Yeah.
So I want to say this up front is that we all have all of these strengths, and if you go to take the survey now, it's kind of going to show you what's on top. What are you using in your life today? And I took it since the pandemic, and I had some changes. So it's not that you don't have all of them, you do have all of them, but sometimes the roles you're in your life and what's going on, you're going to be using some of the strengths more. And we have this tendency to go, oh my, and the other thing I want to say is, for a little bit statistical, this is a rank order, and this is the free test. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if you want, you can spend the money. But so it's not very sophisticated in terms of numbers. Rank order isn't. So I'd like to suggest that when you get it, look at your top 8,
right,
your middle 8, and your bottom 8.
Yeah, group them. But, and then yes, the very human thing is to look at the bottom and figure out what am I doing wrong, right? But since I took that, I had a whole new role within the Frost School of Music, and now I'm the head of Contemporary Voice, and I lead a studio of 80 students and 5 amazing voice teachers. And it has been such a pleasure to be able to rely on such amazing colleagues, really to lean on them as a team, because each of them bring a different strength. And that was something that I learned, because I was usually the one-woman show, having to do it all on my own. Now, thank God, I have my colleagues that I work with.
So that's a great example, because the shift in your life created an experience where you had to rely on people. And I'm going to guess, and I invited you to take it again, I bet your teamwork's going to be a lot higher.
I'm going to take it after this podcast. I think that would be fantastic. Yeah. So let's go through, maybe we'll just go back and forth and see how we are using these. And in turn, anything we say about ourselves is to light a match inside of you as to, when you find out what yours are, am I doing this? And could I do it this way?
Can I put a little context in this?
Sure.
So, this little context, I've done about 70 groups since the pandemic with community and various people. So I wanted to kind of context, we're about into over 200 days of the way our life has changed. And I often refer to it as the day I went home to learn how to live at home. This is my home. I've never spent so much time
Isn't it fabulous?
It's fabulous. And, going into 7 months, a little over 200 days, if I look at this in terms of trauma theory, and I want to put it a little in context. We're no longer at the beginning where we kind of were. In the beginning, we were shocked, but we were very energized. That was the time when you'd call your friends and we were cleaning our closets.
Oh, yeah.
We were organizing our office.
I lost all this weight. It was fantastic.
We lost a lot of weight. Cortisol was running. We were really pretty stressed out.
Learning new skills.
Yeah, and that beginning phase is gone. And we're really pretty much clearly a little bit beyond the middle, and the middle phase is really interesting, because the middle phase is really kind of, and a lot of this comes from actually military theory, is we're kind of in the battle fatigue. We're fatigued.
Yeah, we are.
The battle fatigue stage is, in the military time, they talk about it as it's kind of dangerous, because you've had enough. You had it, you really want to be in another place, you really are tired, your life has shifted so much. And you want it to be over, and certainly I think we all thought it would be over, and it isn't. So we're somewhere in that, because everybody's different, we're somewhere in that fatigue that it's very clear that we're really working hard to be in recovery.
Right.
So I think what's important about that is it's very clear that the people, to do well in this environment, you really have to be resilient. You have to be pretty gritty. And you also have to be able to accept a lot of the negative emotions.
Right.
People,
I mean, as a teacher, and all of us are dealing with different forms of loss, different forms of depression over this, and exhaustion.
Right.
And I feel like it's never more important than to really, recharge ourselves and have, even if this is this is going to be the first time many of you are learning about your character strengths, it's exciting.
And even though it's exciting, it's interesting, even in this warm-up today, to us, we've never recorded here in this place, having to move our lives not only home, but also onto technology, has been a tremendous challenge.
Yeah.
It's a gift that we can stay connected through it, but the technology has brought problems and stresses, and as human beings, we're hardwired for connection, and it wasn't the technology connection. We're hardwired, to want to touch, and be connected. So, we're in some ways pushing hard against some, the need to touch and talk and be together, and even doing this whole kind of presentation.
Yeah, and and on the plus side, obviously, of technology is it allows us to be face to face with each other, which is such a blessing, and allows education to go forward in that way. Allows us to do a lot of things together. And allows you to see. You've been busier than ever.
Well, yeah, I was mentioning, love of learning being just. So we'll just kind of get into this. How we're going to talk some about how we talk in the strength language. You're going to look at your top 5 strengths. and they're called signature strengths. So they're things which are unique. That's that footprint. So love of learning being my top strength, I've just really thrived because I've been able to be home. I'm taking courses with people that stopped teaching, famous people. They came back online during this. So I'm taking courses that I would never have been able
and
to
Nancy
meet these
learned
people.
all about Zoom. I remember her first Zoom, and it was very frustrating and
Zoom,
upsetting.
making slides.
Yes, and now she's a pro.
So
Yeah.
I've really, been able to do my love of learning, and like Raina said, fortunately, my career being a psychologist and a therapist and a counselor has translated pretty easily.
Right.
The challenge for me is sometimes older people. I'm one of those, but some people I forget.
People,
I've had to teach them how to use Zoom or
Right.
FaceTime or their phone. But my career, we were talking about the differences about that. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll say something is, because I don't need an audience. I'm frequently one-on-one or with a
Right.
couple. My career has translated pretty easily to technology.
Right, exactly. My appreciation of beauty and excellence, but in the context of this pandemic, I think the first thing I did was clean everything. Clean, spring clean, get rid of, reorganize, create new zones, set up an exercise bike. I had to make sure that everything looked and felt perfect for me to begin to go down the next path. And then, so I physically cleaned my spaces. I went through all of my courses and recorded videos, decorated and designed really branded Blackboard content. So it was really the beauty and the organization that allowed me to parse this and to figure out what would be the best way. What are the new ways of doing this assignment? So literally a full digital house clean and physical house clean.
Right.
Making it pretty.
And it was interesting kind of watching you because you had taught a few courses online.
Yes.
Your,
right, the
particularly
peak performance.
The peak performance. So you were kind of perched and you knew a lot
Right.
about, and a lot
And I
about
did,
technology.
instructional design. So I was the instructional designer for Frost Online. So I was very well seated to take this
and it was
forward.
interesting because I saw that one of the ways you kind of oriented yourself in the world and kind of created some safety and comfort is you had to do, organize your space, but also because your teaching is so core to you, you had to get your courses organized in a way that was had a lot of integrity.
Right.
And it delivered the content.
Yes.
But it also had to be in a package that was very visually pleasing.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. When we started working with the character strengths, when you go online at the VIA website, it's a pretty sophisticated group, and considerable money behind the research. So one day, a few months into this, Raina looked at me and she said, I don't particularly like how the VIA website looks. Do you mind? Because we were doing a project together. Maybe
Yeah,
Raina will tell you.
I redesigned
She had to redesign the character
everything.
strengths because she didn't like how they looked.
I redesigned them. We made playing cards and they ended up really cute. And I made a whole new website. If it doesn't
It didn't
look
fit for you.
If it doesn't, literally it could be a color scheme. It will bother me that much where I can't work in it.
Right.
I have to really make it look beautiful. Otherwise, I have design is so important to me.
Right.
Interior design, fashion design, instructional design, course design, syllabi design, website design. If any one of those things are off, I will take the time, pause it,
And I guess what I
fix
should
it.
say is appreciation of beauty and excellence was my number one strength for many years.
Right.
It's kind of shifted. It's not on top right now. So that this is the piece about if you live, love, and work with people that you have enough compatibility.
Right.
Because if that hadn't been one of my top
You would have been
strengths-
annoyed by this.
Yeah, I could have been, but I went, go.
Right, she encouraged
I'm very
it.
visual too, and I like it. And, we happen to have some compatibility.
Right.
But if for instance, if appreciation of beauty and excellence, let's say it was one of my bottom strengths, and that's what's kind of interesting about these strengths. So if it was one of my 22nd, 23rd. It wouldn't even be on my radar.
Right.
Raina's right. I could find that not only annoying, or I could, if we were partnering, I could say, what are you wasting time on
Waste
that?
of time, right.
So fortunately, we share enough of these
Right.
strengths. And you're probably going, duh, of course, you know this in couples, you know about,
Well,
that it's just
I mean,
another lens to look at
Well,
things.
Nancy works with a lot of couples, and I find it extra fascinating, the dynamic between two people when you learn you and your partner's strengths and how things like that happen all of the time.
Right.
Things that are number one values for one partner are at the bottom for the other, and learning that that's the difference actually helps them communicate with each other.
Yeah, because what this does is, this is the language of strengths, and we like to say, and this is a huge shift, it's a little slogany, that from wrong to strong, is the whole thing about knowing strengths and your different strengths is appreciation of the differences.
Right.
Not a criticism.
Right.
But an appreciation
Well, yeah.
of what that brings
Because
to...
think about it, because let's say in a couple situation, if someone was 1 and 24 on appreciation of beauty and excellence, the person who was 24 can say, you know what, I delegate all of this stuff to you. Go. You want any design stuff, any whatever. It doesn't matter to me that much, but it matters a lot to you, and it's not something I'm gonna do.
And
so it makes it
that's
easier.
an attitude of respect,
Right.
and appreciation, and also trust.
Right.
Saying that's important to you, go with it.
Go for it.
Right.
All right, so number 2, what is your number 2?
Well, my number 2 is curiosity.
Wow.
Which is
Love
really
of learning,
interesting.
curiosity. Yes.
Curiosity. And what you'll start seeing is these strengths, they don't operate alone. You can see
Right.
how that pairs. And the thing about curiosity is, you heard me mention it before, is I became curious as I started singing with Raina. I said, wow, I wonder how what I'm learning, particularly we're talking about care, how would that apply to people that are performing? And I got curious about it, and I kind of nudged Raina and I said, hey, come on,
Right.
let's come in, let's do the character strengths.
Yes.
Let's do it with some of your students and
Yeah.
see what happens.
Yeah, and we did some informal and then formal. We worked with students, and then we did an official pilot study, which we'll talk about in a future episode, I'm sure. So her curiosity inspired my number 2, which was zest. So now in the pandemic, how does zest help? Well, it helped a lot with everything. I mean, not just like being able to be at home and pause for a second was so important, because you realize, like, you spend all your time doing, acquiring, going, and to literally pause and be in your own space with your loved ones or your pets or your family, or I guess loved ones are
even
family.
yourself.
Well, or even yourself. Like, gives you a moment to sink into your own energy and the things that I'm zesty about that I might not have time to do. I made sure, if my goal was to stay healthy, I was like really putting a lot of zest in what I was preparing food-wise, my exercise routine, just all of my rituals became even more energized. So I think that's how I used
I
it.
think that's a good word. I was going to say that zest, the definition is not doing things halfway, doing them with energy and
Right.
activation, which people, I think, can even see as you're talking to them today.
I'm
And
a
zest is
little
your
activated.
number 2?
Yes,
and
it
zest
is.
is my number 4.
There it is. So that's why we
Yeah.
connect.
And so this is that quality sometimes where people look at us and going, oh my God, those
Like,
two
stop.
are like energizer bunnies.
Stop.
So we typically have a lot of energy
We
to
do.
approach life, which doesn't mean we don't get down or
No.
that we
Well, I was down right before this. A true story. I
Yes.
spent 4 hours with my performance partner, Johnny, trying to get the sound settings in Zoom. And after 4 hours, with help from the head of MAID, Dan Strange, we did nothing but sound like chipmunks. So it was, I fell apart. Nancy helped me. But you know what, honestly, like, the zest in me is already thinking of solutions and other ways, and it's already problem solving, and I'm not going to let it stop me. I'm going to keep going and figure it out. But anyway, that's how zest could be activated. So what is your number 3?
Well, by number 3, I'm extremely proud of this because it's number 3 now, but it used to be in my lower 8. And believe it or not, it's perseverance.
I believe it.
Perseverance. So it's hard. It's hard sometimes to imagine that it was low, considering all those
other things,
degrees and things.
They hold hands in a way.
Well, but so this one I've really worked on. That's what I want to say. This one I have really worked on, and I think a lot of it has been around technology.
Yes, it has.
Because in order to survive in this day and age, I'm in my 70s. Computers are not my thing.
Right.
I never even touched a computer to 2006. And I always said, I hate computers. I did not need them to function.
Right.
Because I could sit in an office and take hand notes. So I think a lot of my perseverance has been being that I'm still very active professionally and clinically and nationally, and I speak and things. If I didn't learn technology and how to do these things, I was going to be dead in the water.
I mean, I think that's so remarkable and commendable because, you're right. Especially, I mean, in a pandemic where technology is the only way to carry on, whether it's people working remotely or, seeing clients or teaching, the perseverance, and let me tell you, it's a perseverance sport.
Yes, it is.
As it was for me during my fun 4 hours,
Yes,
with Johnny. Yeah. But, that is such an amazing strength to have. And you're right, working on perseverance. You persevered through your perseverance.
And, it was interesting. I was thinking today and about, in all of the, I mentioned I did 70 groups and I do clinical hours every week. Every group I've been in, no matter what the topic's been, and almost every client, every phone call, at some point, I think they're going to make a new category of trauma called technological trauma. Because at some point, every phone call, every group, somebody or buddies are going to be talking about the stress of, I couldn't get on this phone call, I couldn't find the link, this didn't work, that didn't work. So, our dependency.
The password.
And the password, there's this, the dependence on technology has gotten even greater during the pandemic because we want to stay connected.
It's almost like another system of our body. We have the nervous system and we have the technology system.
And it's also, I was thinking today, I sometimes think, because you're still in a system, whereas I'm in a private practice and I'm frequently home alone. I don't have anybody to call on, but you really just leveled my playing field today because you are in a university system, and I saw it was just as frustrating for you.
Oh, yeah.
You did have people to call on.
Yeah, we were all on it, all hands on deck, and it was just still not working. So,
it's a powerless feeling.
It's a ... We're going to continue to work on that problem.
Perseverance.
Persevere. I'm gonna hope this rubs off a little the perseverance. Okay, so my third is honesty, and so honesty during this pandemic. Just you said that she was like the self-acceptance.
This is, for those of you that are a little bit into, this is Quignon. She's the goddess of compassion, and she's on my patio. She happens to sit, you don't know it, but I'm in my little exercise area where my bike is.
We rolled out a yoga mat.
So I try to have a lot of compassion about the whole physical thing, but so this is Quignon, compassion.
I think for me, the honesty part, just checking in with myself, just being honest about like the feelings that I was feeling, so that I wasn't always so hard on myself that it's not the same. It's different. And actually working with my students, I'm very intuitive and empathic. So I can tell when there's something off or wrong, or the light is out in one of my students' eyes, even over Zoom, because we do a lot of voice lessons remotely. And to be a place where they can be honest, which I find that many of my students come to me with personal things or just how they're feeling. And I think that for me, like really staying honest was important with myself and them. And
it's what feeds your authenticity.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say something. This whole one of the things I've noticed living where we live here by the university in South Florida is there's a way everybody's not experiencing the pandemic the same.
Right.
And most of the people in my life, and I think in your life, is we're pretty middle class, and we have food on the table and things. And what I notice a lot is we feel guilty. And people feel guilty that they feel bad or depressed or annoyed or irritated because we say things like, oh goodness gracious, I have a house, and
Right.
I have food, and
I had a student say that to me the other day. She was complaining about something, but she was qualifying it. Well, I know that, I should be
shouldn't.
grateful. I shouldn't feel this way. And I said, your feelings are valid. I was channeling you, actually.
No, you got it. You
know,
said yourself.
but
you
yeah.
know, but the truth is, there is. You mentioned it before, and it has a particular name that's interesting. It's disenfranchised grieving.
Right.
It's disenfranchised because we don't typically recognize it. Many of our ways of life have died, and we're working really hard to create new ones.
Right.
I.e., moving on to
Yes.
a technological communication. But we are grieving for lifestyles that we lost. And
We
changes.
are. We definitely
Big
are.
changes.
Especially in music. I mean, and to bring this back to musicians who might be listening, the perseverance, the technology portion, figuring out new ways to make income as a musician, figuring out new ways to work together as a producer, it's all about figuring out new ways. And sometimes, to the benefit, we're also busy. All summer, I worked on an EP and made music videos
What's
and
an
lyric
EP?
videos. It's an extended play, which is
Okay.
shorter than a long play, which means it was a 5-song release. So it's a 5-song album. And I fully recorded, produced it, mixed it. I had it mastered. I created all the album art. I created photo shoots. I created multiple websites, an EPK, which is an electronic press kit, 5 music videos, a couple of which were lyric videos, all of this content around this release, and then worked on all of the promotional things, like building things on that side. Those are things that we could be doing during this pandemic, and I know that you are working on them, but really remember that once everything is open again and everybody's running to gigs, that's not time that you're going to have that you're forced to not be gone, So I think it's important to really take advantage of what you can do. And it does involve a lot of recording and creativity and artwork and, social presence stuff.
Well, I think you're really also talking about how you use your strengths, and all of us, having creativity.
Yes, which is my next strength.
And it's what number for you?
I'm 4.
Okay, and it's my 5th.
Perfect.
And my 4th is zest. This time has really required tremendous creativity and
Right.
perseverance
Yeah.
to kind of reinvent your life and figure out what you were going to be doing.
Right.
And we had an interesting little exchange about I feel really bad for performers and actors and all the theater people in New York because a big part of your life is performing actively and connecting with people live.
Right.
And that's not possible right now, and I think is a huge shift of
Right.
how you get your energy.
Yeah, definitely, because it's different to, perform for a video, even if you see like hearts going up and everything, than it is to feel it in the room, and even as a person feeling it, right? I was thinking about that, like just how much bigger a bass line feels when you're in a venue versus
Right.
when you're hearing it anywhere.
And interestingly today, because this is the first time in the pandemic that we did a little bit recording with someone, because most of the time I'm sitting in my kitchen, which is where I
Right.
do much of my Zooming, alone and talking or doing a group.
This is so much
And
better.
It's even more fun
Right?
just with 2 people. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And so, so that's creativity. I think that we've kind of explained a lot of that. I'll go to my last one to wrap this up. Humor, because you got to have a sense of humor, because things do go wrong.
That's right.
There have been many, many classes where my cats were central figures, and they
your
show
cats
up.
at home?
My
They kind
cats
of
at
run
home
around,
are
yeah.
central figures in some of
Right.
my classes. Yes.
Should we tell them that my dog is sitting
Well,
right in
yeah,
front of us?
Jasper is sitting right in front of us. Jasper is a central figure.
And my central figure dog is sitting at our feet here, big chocolate lab.
Yes.
You just can't see him.
Yes,
right?
exactly. You just can't see him, but he's there.
So you used a word before that you used the word light.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking that, to me, our character strengths are those really eternal lights. Those lights that never go out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that was wonderful about learning, you may be surprised, when you see your top strengths, because I wanted to mention that since I know you're going to all run out and take this, is, when you read those top strengths, you may kind of go, you may be puzzled because a lot of times we don't see our top strengths because they're like breathing and walking.
Right.
You know, we don't think about breathing and walking. So this first phase as we're talking to people is just when you see your top strengths, just kind of start looking at, well, does this fit? How does this show up in my life? So we're really kind of just talking about, and this becoming aware of these lights, because that's what they are to me.
Right.
They're like lights that never go out.
And they help you through your dark period, so they
do.
are lights.
Yeah.
And anytime that I get down or I, feel dejected or what have you, if I consciously remember to go back to my strengths, to channel, to work from there, it instantly gets better. Yep. Not the situation, but the process. And it's part of the way in which we have and still work with individuals, musicians, just all types of populations.
We left out an important point. We really left out an important point that was really riveting, I think, about how we came to this. And I was really touched by this because I don't think I had this quite as much in my graduate training.
Mm-hmm.
It was really riveting to me when you started talking to me a lot about what it was like to be trained, in the performance arena.
Right.
Because I was trained, as a psychologist and a marriage and family therapist, and what it was like to be under that very critical scrutiny.
Well, I basically explained to Nancy, I think everybody goes into music because they love it and they enjoy doing it as a child. Then the stakes become higher with competitions and competition and even getting into college, and what you're passionate about becomes sort of your stress and your competition point. But I think this happens with a lot of people. I happen to have nothing abnormal. I would sing for my voice teacher, and instead of anything being said positive about what I just did, it was immediate. Maybe I got very nice, like a statement like that. And then, okay, we got to work on this. This was bad. This was bad. So it was like a laundry list of all of the weaknesses, and you don't feel strong.
Exactly. And so where we can all relate to that is when you go into school from the time you're very, very young, and it's how we were taught to parent. We start telling people, our kids, what's wrong with this, and you did that wrong, and you did that wrong. So the character strengths aren't just that you're going to learn. Here's character strengths. I happen to write mine down. I carry them with me. It's a huge shift in how you think.
Right.
So you might be resistant to it because our whole society is really kind of based on critiquing and what's wrong from the time we move into school.
Right.
So it's a real shift. It's a very important mindset,
Right.
and it's not easy to learn to look at yourself in terms of strengths.
Well, and also, from what I learned from Nancy, the brain shuts down when you're being criticized. You're not in a place to learn. You're not building anything in your brain. So, it was something that was very, it made a lot of sense to me. And
I think that you're going to find, if you go do it, please do,
Mm-hmm.
that it's going to make sense. It's going to be very affirming.
Right.
And it's going to be very empowering.
yeah, so why don't we leave you with that? We want you to go to viacharacter.org. I believe that's the website.
I think that's it.
We'll give you the real link in the description of this video. And take your own character strength assessment, see what they are. And then, we will be back. We will be doing other episodes with other themes. If you have any comments or questions or things that you'd like us to talk about, please leave them in comments. And we really,
if you're in relationship or you have roommates or you have friends, take it with your friends.
Yeah.
And it's really fun.
Or in a band.
In a band, that's great. And take it and sit down and talk about it. And if you can't see it in yourself, ask your friend.
Oh, yeah.
How does it show up in me? Do you see this in
Because
me?
what Nancy was talking about before, where you might not recognize it in yourself, it's strengths blindness. So
let your friends help you spot it.
yeah, people see it. You might not see it, but they see it.
So
all right.
Here's to strength finding and spotting.
Yay. Okay, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope to see you again very soon. Be strong.
Enjoy your strengths.